Okay, so you might have heard some of this buzz lately, maybe even a specific rumor flying around. Something about the pharmaceutical company Roche making some big plays in the US, possibly involving a, quote, Trump-linked firm. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into the sources you sent over. We'll unpack what seems real about Roche's US strategy and, what might just be noise.
Yeah, it's a really interesting case study, actually. It shows how these huge global companies, well, how they have to adapt when politics and the economy shift significantly. And for you listening, it's super important, right? Learning how to tell what's a solid fact versus just a rumor floating around in this sea of information we all swim in. Our job today is to cut through that static, give you the clearest possible picture based on the info we have.
All right, let's get right into the core of it then. The first really big piece, the headline grabber, is Roche announcing this massive investment. We're talking $50 billion over 5 years, all aimed at U.S. manufacturing and R&D.
50 billion.
Yeah,
It's a staggering number.
it really is.
Yeah.
And the why is maybe surprising. It's not just standard expansion.
Yeah.
Our sources, we looked at Recorder.com, CNBC, The Guardian, they all point to this being a preemptive move, a reaction to potential Trump-era tariff threats on pharmaceuticals. So the idea is basically make more drugs here in the U.S. than they import. If they do that, bam, no tariff exposure.
Exactly. It's a proactive shield. That 50 billion isn't just pocket change. It's a calculated multi-billion-dollar strategy.
Hmm.
They're trying to insulate themselves, build resilience against possible trade barriers down the line. It really solidifies their U.S. market position, but also hedges against future policy risks.
A huge financial firewall, essentially.
Precisely. They're fundamentally trying to rejig their supply chain for the long haul, given how unpredictable global trade can feel these days.
And it gets, well, even more layered than just the investment, right? Roche is also actively talking to the administration.
That's right. They're not just building factories, they're in dialogue. They are formally petitioning for tariff exemptions. Their argument is, look, our U.S. production already meets or maybe even beats what we bring in from overseas.
Okay, but here's where it gets tricky, because it seems like there are conflicting pressures.
Absolutely. And this shows the complex tightrope these companies walk. So even with this massive 50 billion investment and asking for tariff relief, Roche has also warned pretty publicly that other potential policies from that same era could actually hurt this U.S. investment.
Which policies are we talking about?
Specifically, the proposed most favored nation idea for drug pricing, the one that aimed to tie U.S. drug prices to lower prices paid in other countries. Roche basically said, hey, doing that could jeopardize this huge commitment we're making to U.S. manufacturing.
Wow, okay, so one policy push potentially undermining another, that's
In
good.
fact, it really highlights the contradictions they navigate. It's a high-stakes balancing act.
So let's circle back to that initial rumor, the one that kind of kicked off this whole deep dive for us. This idea that Roche hired some sort of Trump-aligned communications firm or, lobbyists. We've looked through the sources you provided. What did we find? Is there any truth to that?
Well, based on all the credible reports, the disclosures, everything we could verify, the answer seems to be a clear no. There's just no solid evidence, no public records backing up that claim.
So no Trump-linked firm on the payroll that we can see.
Not according to the documentation. What we do see is Roche focusing on, let's say, internal strategy alignment. They're talking directly to U.S. officials about regulations. They're using their established corporate advocacy channels. It looks like they're handling this in-house through direct engagement, not by hiring specific external political fixers.
Okay, so the strategy is investment in direct talks, not necessarily bringing in outside political consultants tied to a specific administration.
That appears to be the case. And, sometimes understanding what's not happening is just as revealing as understanding what is. It helps clarify the actual strategy.
That makes sense. So what's the takeaway here for you, our listener? It's really a chance to think about how these huge corporate decisions get made. They're reacting to the political climate, yes, but they're also actively trying to shape it, or at least navigate it, in these really complex ways.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with. We're constantly bombarded with information,
Right.
headlines, rumors, snippets. So how do you go about understanding this intricate dance between giant global businesses and national policies? What does it really take to make sure you're getting the full nuanced picture beyond just the initial buzz?